Hello, I'm Louise Caunicella. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. Now, the World Wildlife Fund Pacific has an innovative program focused on transforming the seafood supply sector to build a firm foundation for sustainable fisheries. The WWF Pacific facilitated a 3-day Marine Stewardship Council Fisheries Standards Workshop recently with Fiji's offshore fishing industry stakeholders to train those involved to be more knowledgeable on how to manage, audit, and maintain Fiji's longline tuna industry, and, of course, developing sustainable and responsible tuna longline fisheries in Fiji. So our guests are from the Sustainable Fisheries and Seafood Program, the manager, WWF, and this is Mr. Duncan Williams. And we also have with us the Industry Liaison and Facilitation Officer, WWF, Andrew. A warm welcome to the both of you.
Good afternoon.
Great. Now, firstly, what is the Marine Stewardship Council Fisheries Standards?
The Marine Stewardship Council, or MSC, it's an international non-profit organization that set up a standard for sustainability around the world. It was formed in 1996 in the United Kingdom. From then, since it has been a moving force around the globe in terms of tuna sustainability. And Fiji tuna longline fishing industry is also part of the MSC certification till to date.
So, I mean, there was obviously a great need to be under this because of what's happening to the fish in our oceans, or specifically our talkback is about tuna, though.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what is a MSC certification?
MSC certification basically it's a label. Pretty simply, it's a label. Basically, it gives consumers. So, if you're wanting to buy, say for example, certified sustainable octopus, or in this case, it's tuna. If you walked into a store and you wanted and you came across that blue label, MSC label, you'd be able to buy that and know that your tuna is basically being certified sustainable.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
yes.
It provides you with a guarantee that your particular can of tuna has come from stocks that are quite healthy, very robust fisheries management in place, and there's no impacts to the wider environment. Yeah? So MSC certification looks at 3 main performance indicators. The first P1 looks at the status of the stock, make sure that the stocks are pretty much sustainable. They're able to rejuvenate and continuously supply adult fish for harvest. Yeah? P2 looks at the impacts of the wider environment, so ensuring that fisheries operations doesn't have an impact on other species in the fishery. So, for example, in tuna, there's been interactions with like seabirds, turtles, sharks, for example. So
Yes.
there's a particular percentage at which interactions are allowed. Anything over that threshold would be deemed as unsustainable, and a fishery would normally not be seen as sustainable and not be given that blue label. The third performance indicator looks at the governance arrangements around the fishery, whether or not you have pretty good management plans in place, for example. So in order for a fishery to be given that blue label and to carry that blue label, they're first assessed against these performance indicators. There are 28 performance indicators in total under those 3 broad areas. And essentially for a fishery to be given that blue label, they need to score over 60. So anywhere between 60 and 79, you're given the blue label, but you have conditions attached there, meaning that you've passed, but you need to improve on certain elements within your fishery. So, for example, you might be, like I mentioned earlier, there might be some issues with your impacts to the wider environment. So, MSC might pass you, but say like you need to change the type of hooks you're using to catch tuna, because those same hooks are also catching turtles or sharks.
Right.
Or you need to get rid of them altogether within a specific time frame. So you need to pass. You need to score over 60 to be given that blue label. Anything over 80 is an unconditional pass. So essentially, you have no conditions set to that fishery. Yeah?
Okay, so the Ministry of Fisheries, do they normally do
Ye-
all these checks?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, because P3 looks at the governance arrangements, Ministry of Fisheries would be a very key stakeholder in the overall MSC certification process, simply because
Okay.
the ministry is responsible for setting the rules that govern fishing nationally. There's also at the regional level, there's also the WCPFC, which is in our field of work, it's the Regional Fisheries Management Organization that looks after the management of fishing specifically for this species of fish, because tuna is, is a highly migratory fish stock.
Okay.
It's quite different to, you know,
Other fish.
like reef fish that only occur within Fiji, for example.
Okay.
Tuna is a species that doesn't respect boundaries, doesn't need a visa or anything like that. So
It goes all over
it just
the oceans,
goes all over the
world.
place.
Oh.
So, you know, the need for species like tuna, you need international collaboration.
Okay.
You need to work with other countries to manage this fish stock.
Mhm.
So at that regional level, rules are set. Yeah? And
Yes.
so again, if you want to be MSC certified, you need to be in compliance with those international rules, which are translated into national legislation by the Ministry of Fisheries. And so all Fiji flag vessels that want to fish within Fiji or receive a license or be licensed by the ministry would need to then be in compliance with these international regulations.
That's really good. Now, we'll talk to Andrew. And I believe you were the coordinator for the recent workshop. So what was discussed during the 3-day workshop?
Thank you. The workshop happened within 3 days. The first day we discussed about the current MSc certification, the current version of MSc, and also we also discussed about the presentation also covered forced and child labor, which is one of the latest requirements by MSc.
Oh.
We got one MSc manager from Sydney who came and delivered the presentation on these 2 new requirements. And also we involved Ministry of Labor. They were willing to present on forced and child labor here in Fiji, on Fiji's context there. We also had presentation from one of the main person that looks after that knows the status of tuna in the Pacific region and also in Fiji, Mr. Charles Sufflet, who is the director for Sol and the Pacific. We were fortunate to have him on board and just to give a brief idea on the evolution of MSc here in Fiji and where it stands at the moment.
Okay. So who funded the workshop?
So the workshop was funded generously by the Foreign Fisheries Agency through the European Union's Pacific European Union Marine Program. Yeah?
Okay.
So WWF is implementing a component of that PUMP project. It's a regional project, and we basically partners with the Foreign Fisheries Agency. And basically it looks at that particular component that we're implementing, looks at elimination of IUU fishing across the region. Yeah?
All right. Well, we'll be back shortly on Speak Your Mind. Stay with us. We're back on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits, and our friends in the studio with us today. We've just had Andrew, who was the coordinator for the workshop that they had, and I actually just want to ask you, Andrew, how will the workshop assist our offshore fisheries sector?
Thank you. The objective of our workshop is to enhance capacity building amongst our fishing industry. As we all know, standards usually not dormant every day. There's always an improvement in standards. So with the latest MSc requirements on the fishery standards and the chain of custody, together with the forced and child labor, we were able to give the industry, the participants, a brief idea on where the MSC standards is heading to, and what's the requirements that they need to adhere to in terms of complying with the MSC fishery standards.
Okay, so what are some of the problems faced when it comes to offshore line fishing or offshore fishing?
In terms of MSC certification?
Yes, yes.
For the MSC certification, for the challenges industry usually go through is the trying to adhere to the changes in standards, because every year there will always be a new requirements coming up. So it's always a challenge for companies to adhere to those requirements. But in the positive aspect, they've been following and adhering to those requirements.
Okay.
Yeah,
Would you like to add on?
yes, I can probably add on as well. So with the current certification I'd mentioned earlier, you need to score specifically over 60 or 80 if you want to have unconditional sort of pass your MSC certification.
Right.
So in the case of the domestic fishery sector, so with the FFIA's Fiji Fishing Industry Association certification, there are a number of conditions attached to their current certification.
Yeah, you explained quite a bit of
Yeah, that's right.
that earlier on, but
So-
maybe something that you didn't mention?
Yeah, so there are currently about 7 conditions, and these can be seen as like issues that they need to address if they are wanting to sort of ensure that they retain their certification over the 5-year time frame in which the certification is sort of valid.
Okay.
So 6 of the conditions actually look at management of the fishery at the WCPFC level, at the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission level. And bearing in mind that the current certification is it's basically applying to 2 specific species, which is albacore fish, the albacore tuna and yellowfin tuna.
So there is a reason for this. Is it the population decreasing?
That's
and
right.
How good is it going now?
So specifically with both yellowfin and albacore, they have their own separate set of issues. With albacore fishing, it's issue about the economic sort of the economic utilization of the species and of the fishery, meaning that the fishery isn't as valuable as it once was. There's a lot of fishing taking place, but it's not returning as much as it once did.
So that's the sign that that specific tuna is getting less?
That particular tuna is in quite a biologically is in a pretty sound state.
Okay.
It's just that I think the prices that's being received for those fish isn't as high as it once used to be.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's something called catch per unit of effort. A lot of effort's being sort of thrown into to catching those fish, but they're not getting as much back. Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially, what's happened over the last few years has been there's been a push for limits to be established. And last year, the Fiji delegation to the WCPFC actually chaired quite a bit of a discussion around the need to put in place what's called a technical target reference point for albacore, so that all the countries that are targeting albacore would have a sort of a target at which they would basically stop fishing, or where management measures would come into play. Yeah?
Right. So how do we strengthen sustainable offshore fishing practices?
Well, I think just leading on from I guess where I left off, I think just having mentioned that management takes place at that regional level. So one of the strategies for strengthening offshore fishing is strengthening our regional level management approaches to both yellowfin and skipjack. Yellowfin and albacore, which the local industry targets, but as well as other species that fall within the remit of the WCPFC, such as skipjack and big eye. Yeah? So there's been a lot of work over the last 5 years to implement what's known as harvest strategy approaches to fishing. It's very it's a mouthful, but essentially it involves putting in place sort of defined limits, and then also defining what the managers of the fishery will do, or the companies will do. But in this case, it's what the managers and the flag states and members of that commission will do once those targets have been breached.
Right.
So it's a pretty it's a pretty innovative way of managing your fisheries.
I mean, there's a lot involved, I must say.
That's right.
I mean,
yeah.
going to the fishermen and I mean, so on, right? Okay, so what are some of, well, I've already asked you some of the problems for offshore fishing. So what are the problems again? Have you got any other, like, I mean, to be more in depth in the problems that have been faced that WWF would like to see improvement on under the Marine Stewardship Council fishery standards? You know, I mean, you've got times when, like, there's different kinds of problems, like how they catch the fish. Maybe you'll be able to explain more on that?
Probably.
Like, you know, bycatch, how
Yeah.
you get other different species when you, for those fishermen that go out for offshore fishing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they do and other stuff as well, I'm sure.
I think for the issues in relation to industry, probably the fisheries just might be the right person to answer that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So from WWF's angle, you can explain about the workshop.
For us, because we have this partnership between the Fiji Fishing Industry Association and the Ministry of Fisheries,
Okay.
in terms of trying to sustain the MSC label for our industry. So one of the things we always wanted to see in place is a continuous compliance of industry towards our national fisheries regulation, which
Right.
is which is the custodian of Ministry of Fisheries.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew, we'll come back to you in a moment on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. Do stay with us if you can. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. A warm welcome to the program, and we'll talk to Andrew now, who coordinated the WWF Pacific workshop, and you can continue from your side, WWF, on how the workshop went.
Thank you. Basically, the idea of having this MSC workshop came about in January when we had our meeting with the Fiji Fishing Industry Association and Ministry of Fisheries. So and it also tied up with one of our current project on tuna sustainability. From then till this month, we work in collaboration with closely with Ministry of Fisheries and also the Fiji Fishing Industry Association in trying to get the invitation and all the logistics across to their association members. For this workshop, we involve the Fiji Fishing Industry Association members, the non-MSC members, and also we've extended the invitation to Ministry of Labour because of the forced and child labour requirements.
Right.
And for the 3 days program, as I've mentioned, for the first day program, we included MSC requirements, forced and child labour. For second day, we included blockchain technology, where we engage one local private company, Traceable Solution. It was done by Mr. Kenneth Katafono, and also we had a trade development advisor from Foreign Fishery Agency, Mr. Saptamani, who came and delivered and also facilitated the workshop from day 2 and day 3. Day 3, we had a field visit. We divided the groups into 5 companies, and they were all assigned to those companies. And after that, we asked them to return back to the workshop venue and do their own presentation. This is just to allow us to analyze their understanding on their previous knowledge on MSC and chain of custody and what they evaluate during the field trip. And the feedback from individual industry were positive. they were happy with what they've learned from what they saw in terms of the chain of custody, where they fish. Because for our participants, majority of our participants owns fishing vessel, and they owns the fish. So they sell fish to this company who is MSC chain of custody certified. And one feedback we got from the industry, from one fishing vessel owner, is they've been seeing their fish taken to companies, sold to companies, but they don't know how their fish is being processed there, where their fish goes through. And they were really happy to see that the fish has a separate chain of custody, cold stores, separate companies that they process it, and it's not any companies that just come and process the fish. So they were really happy with the standard, the system that Fiji Fishing Standards or chain of custody companies has in terms of MSC and MSC chain of custody.
All right, well, that's good. So from your side, WWF, the objective of the workshop was...
Yes, the main objective of the workshop is to enhance knowledge capacity amongst our fishing industry in relation to the development in requirements by MSC, because we just had latest MSC requirements version 2 that was developed and required by its clients to follow. And also the requirements on forced and child labor by MSC.
Which is something new, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So what else did you learn in the workshop? A way to tackle the reduction of illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing in the region as well?
Yes, all this aligns to trying to combat IUU fishing in terms of meeting the fisheries regulatory requirements, in terms of meeting specifically the Marine Stewardship Council standards, and also it allows the industry to have that close network with the MSC manager who came to do their presentation, and also with other managers in the fishing industry.
So you're just facilitating the workshop to make sure all these stakeholders are doing the right thing.
Yes.
Okay, so that's your part.
Yes.
So maybe you might want to say something else.
Yeah, I mean, like
Duncan?
in terms of the status of the fish stocks, I think it's relatively healthy in terms of like albacore and yellowfin tuna. It's again, in terms of its management, though, it's something that's handled at the regional level, and that's where a lot of our initiatives have been focused. Apart from the workshop, we've got a separate set of work that looks at encouraging the development of more stringent measures at the WCPFC level.
So your workshops, do you have many? Do you have many with the fishing industry? A lot?
This is the first for this year.
Yeah, this is the first.
So this must be a really good one then.
Yes.
Okay, first for this year.
Yes.
Okay, so you're looking forward to many more. How did you feel after the workshop?
Yeah, I think it's I think there's positive feedback from many of the participants that that were there. Some were there for the first time, and I think just going back to the objectives, when certification, when the industry at first received their certification, there were only 33 vessels that were part of that initial assessment. Over the course of a year, so they were recertified last year in March 2018. Over the course of the year, we had another 22 vessels that were included as part of the certification. So really, part of the workshop was looking at ensuring that those 22 vessels that were included were fully aware of, of all the MSC requirements, as well as the new requirements, as Andrew had mentioned, around forced and child labor. But also looking at the chain of custody requirements, the companies, that they understand what these requirements are, as well as understanding the traceability requirements of fisheries.
Right, so you must have had all the top people in the meeting, so it can
That's right.
filter down to everybody else. Hey, but we'll be back soon on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. Welcome. And, well, we've got our main girl in the studio with us. That's what I should call you. And she's the Offshore Fisheries Licensing and Permits Officer, Richelina Tandra. Welcome to Speak Your Mind.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. I know I've been asking your questions to the WWF, but anyhow, we need to find out about the population of tuna now. And do we have plenty, or is there less? Or what's the catch rate in Fijian waters like now?
Thank you. So the division I'm representing under the Ministry of Fisheries is Offshore Fisheries Division, Offshore Fisheries Center.
Right.
So we're responsible for the offshore fisheries sector, the management, and we are governed by the two legislations. The Offshore Fisheries Management Act of 2012 and the Offshore Fisheries Management Regulations of 2014. There are policies also in place that guides us in performing our roles and the responsibilities. So in terms of the question that you've raised in terms of stock, we do have data with us. There's a separate unit that looks after data. They collect, data is collected from all our domestic vessels, Fiji-flagged vessels,
Okay.
in the form of log sheets, landing summaries, stock sheets, probably from processing facilities that's submitted to us. There are timelines to be met by the companies. So all those data are collected, compiled, and are entered into databases.
Okay.
These databases are regionally recognized or controlled. As my two other friends were mentioning, the WCPFC is there. So there are like structures or strategies or frameworks in place from the regional level that we are obligated to follow or to abide by. Fiji is obligated to follow. So when those data are collected, they're analyzed, and there is a big scientific committee meeting where they go and discuss about data from each member countries, Fiji as well.
Okay.
So they'll be able to show us, not just Fiji, but other Pacific Island countries, how our stock is like. So at the end of the year, when they hold their commission meeting, that's where they highlight to everybody in the meeting room how stock is like. And so Fiji will be able to see how stock in Fiji, as they have mentioned, tuna isn't just Fiji tuna because it's migratory in nature. So it
But
goes
we
around.
have like a zone in the
Yeah.
ocean, right?
So-
So, there's a line there.
Yes. So we govern the Fiji exclusive economic zones. So in terms of MSC, it's Fiji EEZ, and the three adjacent high seas.
Okay. So what is required when someone wants to do offshore fishing? Obviously, you give them a license.
Yes.
So, I mean, do we have, how many do we have locally? And do we have foreign vessels as well that get licenses to fish in our exclusive zone?
Thank you. There are categories in our licensing system for Fiji licensing system. So the license to fish within Fiji fisheries waters category has a cap. So it's all aligned to the sustainability phenomena that we are trying to make people be aware of.
Yes.
So in terms of the license to fish within Fiji fisheries waters category, Fiji only allows 60 licensed vessels. It's like a license cap.
Oh,
So
okay.
only 60 vessels are allowed to go under that category and not to exceed that 60 license cap. So
Okay.
from there, and then we're able to work out everything else. And there are processes in place for companies who may want to apply in to get that license category, and there's a stringent processes in place as well in terms of deliberations and approval and endorsement by our permanent secretary for fisheries.
Okay, so I mean, I've noticed in the market that sometimes you see the small tuna that they're selling, and that's not allowed, right? You know how you get the small tuna, so I mean, obviously that tuna won't be able to grow and have babies.
Yeah.
Not babies, but fish babies.
might be a bit difficult to determine the species because you have non-schooling species like
Oh,
bonito,
okay.
for example. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, some of the problems faced is the bycatch as well when these licensed fishing people go out and catch. So maybe you can explain some of the problems.
So, so in terms of bycatchers that you mentioned, when they go out, there are reporting standards that companies or vessel owners or agents need to abide by, and there are reporting documents that the captains, anybody on board,
Are they honest?
and agents, they need to fill in, day out, time, positions, where they caught this fish, how many fish they caught, all those different fields are required to be filled in by the captain, and the operator or the vessel owner needs to be aware of whatever's happening out there as well. So in those in that log sheet, they put in everything, and when it comes back to the office, it'll be verified against other documents that they submit and the documents that we have as well, reporting documents. We'll be able to verify them against each other.
Right.
That's where we'll be able to pick out if cheating took place or some fish disappeared somewhere along the way.
Right.
And that's where MSC, all the requirements and the standards that MSC is bringing is in line with the process that's been in place already, governed by the legislations that in place that are in place too.
Okay, so as our fish, you said, is quite healthy now. Now, fishing methods become increasingly extreme, but we'll talk about it when we come back, about destructive fishing practices that may destroy the marine environment. On Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. We'll be back shortly. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. And our guests in the studio have been very kind enough to come. We've got our friend Racheli, who is the Offshore Fisheries and License Permits Officer. Oh, that's a big role. And we just thank you for your explanation earlier on. And I was just wanting to ask you, can you tell us what destructive fishing practices are? And have you caught anyone doing these types of practices in our, what do you call it, exclusive economic zone for fishing?
Thank you. For the offshore fisheries sector, or the licenses that we give out, it's mainly for long lining, long line method for tuna species.
Right.
In terms of destructive, drift netting is one of them, and it's a no-no for Fiji, and it's even stated in our legislations that those are some of the things that a method that's strictly not allowed in Fiji or in any or to be used by any of our domestic vessels. In terms of destructive fishing, if you're meaning by IUU fishing, there's a separate unit within our division that looks after surveillance, enforcement.
Okay, so the enforcement bit, who does that bit?
We have our enforcement and surveillance unit.
Navy?
Who work we work closely with the Fiji Navy and other line agencies, border agencies, in terms of combating the IUU problem.
Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes, do they ever use poison and explosives? No, not for deep sea, long line
deep sea,
fishing.
yeah.
So that's about the only one. Okay, just on the licenses, you already mentioned how many local licenses do we have who are doing this long line fishing?
For long line, we have a license cap of for license to fish within Fiji Fisheries waters, EEZ, archipelagic waters and territorial seas. We have 60. We also
So we have exactly 60 or
license
less?
cap, and then we have our authorization to fish beyond Fiji Fisheries waters. Yes. They can be fishing in EEZ, and they can also hold an authorization to fish in adjacent high seas or in the high seas.
Okay.
We have exploratory fishing license category. So it's really up to the companies on which license category that they want to apply for. And when it comes into us, then we will do our verification, our vetting, and all the processes in place before final endorsement is given out.
How much does a license cost? I might go into the business.
It varies. It
Yeah.
varies.
It varies, right?
And it's pretty expensive as well.
Oh, okay. So our local fishermen happy about how they're catching tuna, but I think I've got someone on the line. Just give me a second. Hello, Gold FM, speak your mind.
Hello.
Yes, is there a question that you'd like to ask?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Bula
sure.
Vinaka.
Bula Vinaka, go
And
ahead.
Hi to the guest that are talking this morning. Just a question. Is MSC certification linked to conservation and market opportunities?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Is MSC certification linked to conservation and market opportunities?
Yes, it's Duncan Williams here from WWF. MSE certification is definitely linked to sustainability and market access. Hello?
No, you carry on.
Okay.
He's listening, yeah.
And so the certification was actually set up to ensure that sustainable fisheries were rewarded for compliance with the regulations, but also for their observation of sustainability practices. By having that blue label, again, the market comes into play. You have consumers that basically drive the demand for a specific product. In this case, you have consumers that drive demand for sustainable products to be bought. And consumer dollar then basically speaks. They choose to purchase a specific, in this case, MSC certified product versus a product that is not certified sustainable.
Okay.
Having said that, MSC certification and MSC certified products, because of the certification and because of the commitments made by retailers and by consumers to reward these certified products and these certified labels, you find in most markets that a certified tuna, for example, will fetch a premium, and it's usually 25% greater than uncertified products. Yeah? Okay. So there's always there's a huge, I guess, advantage in terms of fisheries that want to move towards sustainability. There's obviously an economic component to that, a very strong economic incentive to ensure that your operations are sustainable, and that's why I think a lot of the Fiji Fishing Industry Association and the industry here in Fiji that are not MSC certified but are looking at becoming certified in the near future. And this is why we ran this workshop, is to try to encourage more sort of adoption of MSC certification, not only here in Fiji, but also across the region, because we see that as a way of actually improving not only the sustainability, not only your sustainable operations and ensuring that you're sustainable on the water in terms of your operations, in terms of ensuring that you're maintaining your stock, in terms of maintaining your total allowable catches, keeping them at sustainable levels, not having that impact on the wider environment, on bycatch, for example. but you're also, because of that, you're also getting back quite a large value for that same product. You must understand these are the same species of fish that you're targeting.
Right.
It's just that, because of your sustainability, and you have sustainable conscious consumers that are in Europe, in the US, for example, in Japan, and as increasingly global markets start to see the value of sustainability and start to demand sustainability,
Yes.
you will see that sustainability and these certification, let's say the certification labels become a part of your market accessibility into these markets, such as in the EU. And because if you don't have these labels in the near future,
Yes.
consumers will then say, "Look, we don't want to buy
Yes.
those particular products because we know that is an unsustainable."
That's right. I mean, people are aware. So, I mean, in order to provide for the current and future generations of families dependent on our marine life, either directly or indirectly, well into the future. But unfortunately, Speak Your Mind has come to an end, and I thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. And this is from the WWF, the Sustainable Fisheries and Seafood Program Manager, Duncan Williams, Vinaka Vakalevu, and also Richelina Tandra, who's the Offshore Fisheries and Licensing Permits Officer, Vinaka. On Gold FM, Speak Your Mind. Until next week, Nisamo Demanda.